The 2024 general election has finally come and gone, and while there is a lot of optimism on the federal stage, it's time to take a closer look into what happened in California. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That is right, the elections have come and gone. All of the drama leading up to that special day and some of it now carrying over. Obviously, there is still a lot to analyze, both federally and in the state of California. That's what we're going to try to start doing here today. So to walk us through that, we have brought back the legislative director for CRPA. He's also the host of Firing Line Radio. You can catch him on AM 590, The Answer, every Saturday at 1 p.m. That is Rick Travis. Rick, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, before we get into this today, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps with the algorithm. We're trying to educate as much as we can, especially as we move forward on politics, looking into the 2025 session. It's all cumulative. It all builds off of each other. So we're trying to build that backstory now in really trying to assess what has happened in these elections. So please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. It really helps the channel, helps get it out to as many people as possible. So Rick, let's just dive on into this first. I'm thinking we can maybe hit the national election here. Something that I noticed specifically for California is we actually saw a 5 million vote swing from the 2020 election to the 2024 election from Democrat to Republican. Now, obviously, you know, the Second Amendment crowd can be in either one of those camps, but you can't deny that there is a little bit of a shift in the voting there. I'm curious, how do you view this in comparison with everything else that's happened in the state? Is this an isolated incident for the presidency, or is this an overall cultural shift?
No, I think that's a great question. I think it's an overall cultural shift. I think a few things happen. A lot of us, change is something humans don't like to go through. And, you can see that all the time. But when, you'll see a person remodel their house, when something really bad's happened, like the roof leaked, and they're like, well, if I'm going to rip off the roof, then I'm going to do all this stuff. But prior to that, they weren't doing anything. I think there's been an amalgamation of issues that has awoken the electorate. I think a lot of people chose to flee, go to other states, and people watched and said, well, that isn't working out so well for them because a lot of the California baggage has moved to those other states. So a lot of people decided to stand up and fight this time around, and fight they did. And I want to point out, it wasn't just the 5 million red votes that went that way. There was also blue votes that turned red. And being honest, there were some reds that went blue, but by and large, even some of the blue votes are pro-2A votes that went our way. So it's a big shift. The shift is not done. I would say the message that the voters sent to Sacramento, as well as to Washington, D.C., if you thought that the DNC at the national level was tone deaf to America across the board, I would say the center of those plugged ears is in Sacramento. And they still think that they're right, even though the majority of Californians are saying no. And when I say majority, people are like, well, Rick, it wasn't majority red. Landmass-wise, yes, there's some areas along the coast that weren't. But if you start to look at those areas, there are a lot more precincts that did go red within the blue. So it's not a solid blue. The other issue I'd bring up is, you just have to go look at Proposition 36. 70% of Californians told the governor and the elitist left, we don't agree with you. And their comeback has been nothing short of tyrannical. I mean, I've been on X and other things saying this governor and the left are the very definition of being tyrannical, in the sense that being a tyrannical leader means you're both oppressive and cruel. And I think those are applicable terms to our left-leaning legislature.
Well, I want to dive into a couple things you said there a little bit more in depth, but before we do that, the overall look at these state races for California, you've got the state assembly and the state senate. Now, I know that they haven't called a lot of these races yet, even, coming into the next week here. There are people that are making predictions. It looks like with those predictions, the makeup of the Senate and the Assembly here in California, the numbers aren't going to change a whole lot as far as the majority and the minority. I'm curious from your perspective, what is the optimism that you see with these California state elections as they've happened?
So, I love sports, you know that. And I think sometimes you have to look at your team and go, all right, there's teams on paper. I remember it was the Dolphins not long ago. I think a few years ago, they were losing every game by 3 points. And it was like, so when you looked at the record, they were, I forget, but maybe like say 4-12. And you're like, it's dismal. But they weren't getting blown out. And they were costing teams, and they were doing damage. And then the next year, they had a very good season. The year after that, they were building. This is somewhat of that season. I mean, if I was to be a total pessimist and say, the seats, of which there's about 15 yet to be called as we're doing this, that we lost all 15. I'm going to I'm going to promote one particular district as an example. Assembly District 58 was owned by the Cervantes family, which is very much a political dynasty up and coming in California. Sabrina had been the assemblywoman from that area. She ran for the Senate and pulled her sister up, so there's a little nepotism, to take her spot. Spent over $1 million, 7 digits, against a therapist that's very pro 2A. She's an outstanding individual, think the world of her. CRPA definitely got behind this campaign. And Leticia Castillo spent just under $85,000. So literally almost 11, some would argue closer to 12 to 1. And right now, as of the time that we're reporting, they've only counted 70% of the vote, but she's up 1.5 percentage points. She's still winning. Now, could they find votes? Yeah, and I could talk about, there's a lot of questions, some voter fraud things that have been going on in California in these districts that are taking longer to vote. There's been some weird flips that don't make sense because literally everything else on those ballots was voted the opposite way of that. So there's question marks. The problem with that is if it was proven that there was voter irregularities, which is called stealing an election, nothing changes other than, yeah, that happened and we're sorry and we'll do stuff in the future. But I think what has happened is if you look at the number of places where voter irregularities didn't take place because we had people on the front lines, over 250,000 of them statewide watching. I think because we drilled the focus, we used alternative social media instead of Main Street media. You have to look at these as victories because that's $1 million that the Dems can put to other battles. And if you look up and down, whether it's a congressional seat, like down to 47th, the amount of money they spent on DUI Dave to beat Scott Baugh, which technically right now looks like Min may have won, but they outspent millions of dollars to their side. So on one side, you could say, but you got to remember something, Kevin, going to a national election. Barry Sanders in 2016 was way ahead going into the Democratic National Convention of Hillary Clinton. So how in a couple of days does Hillary Clinton come out as the presumptive nominee? Because the DNC, it's a fact, this isn't hearsay, was going bankrupt. They didn't have money to pay their bills. And Hillary came in with the Clinton Foundation and said, we'll pay the bills and we'll give you some extra money. Just one catch. I'm running for president, not Barry. And, stole the election, bought the election, whatever term you want to use, but that's what happened. The Democratic Party in the state of California should be going bankrupt. We are, by many measurements that are nonpartisan, $70 to $75 million in debt this year and already in 26 before I ever get started. They're going to want to pass literally millions of dollars worth, which is why we see illegal meetings from our governor where he gets everybody together at midnight to raise our gas taxes 65 cents a gallon. So, looking at the retaliation tactics, looking at a lot of things, this is going to be a very heated legislative season, not just in the 2A area, across the board. There's going to be a lot of bloodletting, and I think long as people listening to this program and programs like this understand what we established on election night. I know, Kevin, you and I have been doing this for a while, and I've used a metaphor that Bruin on a legal basis was very much like the Battle of Midway. We've won the war, but we're going to have to fight for every island. Well, I will tell you right now that our November elections was D-Day +1. We have the beachhead. We've kicked the enemy off the beach. We've established a place to bring things in. But we're not at Victory Day. Victory Day is still probably 4 to 5 years away. And we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of here overnight. But I would say things are looking very, very bright because we are toppling dynasties and bleeding them out. And that is great.
Yeah, and I think that's a good metaphor and a good way to look at it. You know, the state didn't get this way overnight, so it's not going to change back overnight. And I know a lot of pundits are talking about the gains that Donald Trump in the federal elections made. So what it kind of sounds like is there's been a lot of gains made here, maybe not enough gains to turn the election, but if the trends keep going that way, some of these elections will be turned in the future. So that's certainly some optimism and surely a good reason to continue and advocate politically in California in the years to come. But I'm curious, kind of conversely, on the other side of it. You're looking at a 2025 legislative session. You're also looking at Governor Newsom, who is certainly not above retaliation. I know that Senate Bill 1327 is still clear in my mind, which was retaliatory legislation from the California legislature when Texas made an abortion ban, except they took it out on gun owners over here. What are some of the challenges that we're facing in California as a result of this election? The numbers still looking like they're going to be the same in the 2025 legislature, and also the sheer cope of Donald Trump winning the presidency with the California legislature now.
I don't think, like it's easy to say what you said on paper because, counting Republicans and Democrats, but I think our community has got to remember we have Democrats, and I've said this 2 years ago, and people looked at me like, okay, sure. Not sure I believe you, Rick. But, I had said, hey, we have several prominent Democrats who are pro-hunting, pro-Second Amendment, pro-target shooting, pro all that. We just haven't given them a place to land, but they're getting tired of the party moving farther and farther left. Now, you can make the argument they revolted, or you can make the argument that we're more the party of the people, being Republicans, and the Democrats have become elitist. I think that's a safe argument to make. And so you have places like El Dorado County, that rural El Dorado, very, very conservative, but El Dorado Hills, that area, for the most part, at least light blue, moving towards dark blue. However, you look at Marie Alvarado Gale up there, the state senator, and she was like, yeah, I'm done. And she left the Democratic Party. Now, she paid a heavy price for that, lost a bunch of key positions she held in the Capitol, but she did it because the people in her county rose up and switched parties as well. So we have several places like that throughout the state that I would not be utterly shocked if we saw 5 to 6 more legislators in the next year switch parties, or at the very least refuse to vote with their party. Both of those work for us. So I'm not wholly convinced that those numbers on paper are going to hold true when it comes to votes. The second part of that equation too that I think is very important to note is, as we move into this, the more the left in Newsom retaliate, I think that's going to be more of a surge against him, because people are done. People are done with the high prices. People are done with the identity politics in this state. People are done. You look at education, you look at all the things that are going on. And a lot of what the governor is trying to do is grandstand, and he knows he can't win. This is a state, Kevin, that sued Donald Trump from 2016 to 2020 over 100 different cases. You know how many they won? None. But it cost the California taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. I don't have the exact, but I've heard that anywhere from 50 to 100 million bucks. I don't have the exact number. I'll try to get it for you for a later video. But my point is, that's money could have went to school lunches that everybody's like, yeah, kids that can't eat should be able to eat. That could have went to, I don't know, fixing potholes, critical infrastructure. That is money that could have been put to better use, but instead it was for the governor's temper tantrum. We need to hold that governor and that left, accountable. And what are they saying? Oh, we're broke. So you know what? Let's go to the taxpayers that have already said, I'm tired of paying high taxes. I'm tired of having all these things done to me. And what they do? With deaf ears, they said, let's raise at midnight your gas taxes. And within 72 hours of doing so, said, and we're probably going to raise them a like percentage or higher again within the next 90 days. So we're talking somewhere between $1.50 and $2 a gallon more because they want to throw a temper tantrum. We need to be seen as the people, regardless of your party back, timeout. No. Because here's the thing. What are you going to do? Tell the government, federal government, you can't come in and prosecute people for breaking federal crimes? That's the role of the federal government. That's not a states' rights issue. Many of the things that he's saber rattling, you can't do. It's the equivalent of going on a soccer field and trying to institute baseball rules. Okay, doesn't apply here. Get off our field. And that's what we, the people, need to be saying. Stop it. Stop wasting our money.
Well, yeah, a couple of fair assessments here. It's easy to get lost in the Republican Democrat conversation throughout something like an election, but we as an organization are nonpartisan. We advocate for the Second Amendment, and you've certainly been outspoken in your time at the legislature about the fact that there are Democrats that do vote with us or abstain from votes to help us when it comes to the legislature. So that's always important to understand, that when you see something like 60-20 on a piece of paper, it doesn't necessarily translate into votes in the legislature that way. Also a fair assessment, and I definitely agree with you. You have this 5 million vote swing on an election where all the polls said that the top priority for people was the economy, and then right after that election, you're just gonna hike up their gas prices because you're upset. So that's definitely a challenge that Californians are facing immediately. The status of the legislature in California hasn't changed yet. It won't change until next year, but these are some of the immediate things that Californians are going to face. I'm curious, though, what does the 2025 legislature prospectively look like to you right now? Any challenges that we're going to face there, or is it kind of the same as we've had?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some serious challenges. I think the people, whoever's listening to this has to understand some hard truths. Hard truth is many people that came together in this special session to aid and abet Newsom's temper tantrum, as I'll call it, did so with zero accountability. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm coming back as a lame duck. I'm out of office. What are you going to do to me? You can't fire me. I'm not coming back. And they're voting as they're not even your representative anymore. Their offices are cleared. Their staff's been cleared out. And yet they're pontificating, backing the governor. That shows you how desperate they got, because now as the new people come in, they're going to have upset constituents. And so there's going to be some tie-ups, and you're going to see this governor is thin-skinned and heavy-handed, and he's going to try to push back. And, a really good friend of our community, an outstanding individual. I'll never forget 2 years ago when Assemblyman Tree Taw out of Orange County, former mayor in Westminster, California, became an assembly member, and he went to run a very pro-law enforcement, pro-Second Amendment bill. And he goes to present it on day one. And Reggie Jones Sawyer, the head at that time of Assembly Public Safety, cuts him off like 2 minutes into the speech and tells him, oh, that's really cute. That's the typical thing a stupid freshman would do, basically. Just talks to this Vietnamese man like he's nothing, sends him back to his seat, and kills the bill right there. That's how heavy-handed the opposition plays with people trying to do the right thing for California. Now what you're going to see is the governor tried to do that, but I think there's going to be more of an imbalance, and more Californians are watching. The media is a little scared, so I think the media is not going to be quite. I've watched shifts in Cal Matters, Politico, and everything since the election, and how hard they're covering and watching the left here in California. So if that trend continues, Kevin, here's what I see happening. I see some very bloody, very nasty battles coming up. I do see them coming after the Second Amendment, on like lock storage, because that's a favorite. They're going to try again. They're going to come after us on insurance again. They're going to try stuff because, bottom line, Gavin Newsom sees himself as the heir apparent. And Gavin Newsom is going to come out hard fighting, because there are some that say Kamala Harris should either run for governor of California, God forbid, or should run for president again. And Newsom wants to get out because he felt robbed that he didn't have an open primary for when Biden stepped down this time. So in the balance, he is going to do everything to try to get that 2A money. And we know that President-elect Trump has already said that the Office of Gun Violence Prevention will no longer be in the White House. And we already know that our governor has been like, well, they can move to Sacramento. So, people have already asked me, am I worried about that? No, we've already been fighting those boneheads in Sacramento. So nothing really changed for us, but he's going to try to optically make it sound that way. And our people just need to go, that's a joke, right? Like nothing changed. And we
Right.
beat you before, we'll beat you again, because our win record, both in the legislature and in the courtrooms, has been over 95%. So stop.
Well, let's talk about something else that got voted in overwhelmingly. We don't always get an opportunity to advocate for or against propositions in elections because, we are focused on the Second Amendment and the Second Amendment community. But since 2016, when Gunmageddon happened, there really hadn't been so much advocacy on these until Prop 36 this year. Every single county so far, with the votes tallied in this election, voted overwhelmingly yes on Prop 36. Can you go ahead, give us a refresher of what Prop 36 is and why we advocated for it and think that it'll benefit the community?
Sure. So, we're always talking about law-abiding citizens. That is a foundation of everything we do. We're fighting for law-abiding citizens, not criminals. And one of the areas that we're seeing that law-abiding citizens could be put in a hard way is, you're carrying your concealed carry firearm, you're out in your house, you're out just about anywhere. And the laws in this state had leaned so far towards criminal activity that somebody could basically come up on your front lawn, and if your driving lawnmower is only worth $900, they could take it. There was a doggone thing you could do about, and the police weren't going to do anything about, because they were basically handcuffed by the legislature of, until you break the $1,000 mark, no. And so a lot of organizations, companies, and law enforcement agencies said, make it $1,200, because somebody can always argue, well, it was on sale for $900 somewhere else, and try to play those games. As a result, you saw gangs of kids that would pull up on their electric bikes and other bikes and break into everything from 7-Elevens to, all the way up to stores on Rodeo Drive in Southern California, and take as much stuff as they could and get away with it. That caused prices to raise. It caused some of the weirdest things. Like, I don't know if you've ever felt threatened, Kevin, by toothpaste. Because for years, I was always able to walk into any store and just go grab a new thing of toothpaste. All of a sudden, toothpaste is locked up behind closed doors. I have to call somebody. I mean, I can literally pick up ammunition at some FFL stores easier than I can toothpaste, deodorant, razor blades. And why is it? Well, because someone might steal it. We wouldn't lock up the shoplifter, but we would lock up the stuff that they would shoplift. And so, one of the grocery stores near me, and it's in a very nice area, there's like literally 4 complete aisles. It's nothing but locked glass cases. And I'm thinking, it was never this way. I think a lot of people in California were like, this is ridiculous. What used to be, a 20-minute grocery store was now an hour, because you had to keep calling people to open up stuff to get things. And then some of those places wouldn't even let you carry it in your cart. It had to go up to the front counter. You had to wait in a certain line to be able to claim and say, I'm, number 27, can I have those 11 things? Like, just ridiculous. So I think that, coupled with law enforcement saying we can't do things anymore, rising crime rates, more and more people ending up being victims, I think a lot of Californians were like, enough's enough. And one of the things that our first 2 words of our motto is be safe. You can't be safe when criminals have a declarative advantage over the law abiding. And so Prop 36 was a boomerang back to say, we're done. And it wasn't just Proposition 36. You can also look at, we had the far left trying to say that people that were incarcerated cannot be used for labor. So in other words, we're supposed to reward them. They often said that they were criminals, if you hear them, because, well, I didn't have a place to stay, Kevin. I didn't have a gym. I didn't have food. They get all that in prison. And so we would ask them to do a little bit of work to pay society back, because we're paying tens of thousands of dollars for their foolishness. And people are like, oh, you're trying to say that didn't fly. Californians said, yeah, no, we're not buying that. And I think if you look down a lot of the propositions, Californians have sent a clear message. We're done with identity politics. We're done with rewarding criminal behavior. And CRPA didn't get involved in all those, but we did in Prop 36 because we believe in having a safer community.
Well, yeah, definitely something to celebrate there. And overall, you would think that is a good message to just kind of tell California that we've had enough. Let's talk about the CRPA PAC for a second here. Conversations just between you and me, this, Rick. I was super excited to just see the activity of the PAC for this election cycle. The CRPA PAC endorsed more candidates than it ever had before. I'm curious. I know that some of the elections are still coming to its conclusion, but overall, how have those endorsed candidates done in their elections, and are there any notable races that are worth mentioning?
Yeah, so we had several measurables that I have no problem sharing. One of them was outreach, really increasing the PAC's ability to outreach. The PAC had never really been utilized that much, so we're never going to have this high of a number. But we, on a normal year for the past 3 election cycles, would engage about 300 candidates statewide, which was kind of the 2A norm between other groups with 3 or 4 initials to their names. And this year, we reached out and engaged over 4,400 campaigns. And out of those came into monitoring 1,700 and then actually endorsed a few. And here's funny, some people were like, well, you graded some but didn't endorse them. Some of the candidates didn't want an endorsement from us. And I said it to people that called, but I'll say it on this thing. That concerns me. When a candidate says, I don't want people to know that I was endorsed by you, because that means I'm pro Second Amendment and that could cost me. Okay, if you're thinking that in a political campaign, then how do I trust your vote's going to be with us in office? And so I think that was a big deal. We had a lot of people, but I'll come back, we had some people that literally left the tailgate discussions I've talked about for 2 years of saying I could do better, and actually stood up to go do better. And one of the things our department, there's a couple of us working in my department, have been discussing is those people who chose to stand up and fight, 60% of the ones we backed look like they're going to be in office. Which my message to those listening to this is, I'm serious. If you want to run for office, reach out to us. We will help get you the tools. We'll help get you the training. We'll help you do it, because we've seen that happen. I also noticed in this that we did a lot of grassroots work in different areas. And there are some people that, Josh Newman's race, which is a Senate race in Orange County in Senate District 37. He was up against former Assemblyman Steve Choi. Newman and the Democrats spent millions, large ad campaigns, large high-tech campaigns. One of the things I love about Steve Choi is one of the kindest-hearted people, but he is a walker. He walks the precincts. He walked every precinct in that district, and some of them twice, trying to make sure he had an opportunity to meet with everybody, whether they liked him or not. And right now, with 82% of the report in, he's up 51.3 to 48.7 and winning. And I think this also speaks to something you and I have talked about. All politics are local, folks. And when we get out and we do the grassroots work, we win. It is not about social media and tech. Does that have an impact? Of course it does. But it's not as strong an impact as physically going and meeting with the people.
Well, certainly if you're talking about gas tax or gas hikes and things that Gavin Newsom is trying to do right now, I know that Newsom was recalled at one point because he put a gas tax on in one of his prior stints in office. So Seems like there's still a lot to look forward to as far as the election turnout is concerned. Kind of seems like we got an idea moving into 2025 of what we're going to be up against. So what are your final thoughts as we move to the conclusion of counting some of these ballots and looking into next year?
I think we're going to look really good. We got some really good firebrands. We got some strong personalities. My good friend Belisali out of Assembly District 63 looks like he's going to definitely be back up there. It's still really tight for Greg Wallace. If he'll make it in or not, I'm hoping he does. That's a razor tight race. Last time it was decided by 85 votes. It may be decided by less than 100 votes again. But we also had some races where we didn't flip the seat, but the person we got coming in. So Marie Waldron, just a fantastic individual out of San Diego. Her replacement, Carl DeMaio, is a firebrand. Anybody knows anything about Carl in the South? He has been one of the oh God, there's so many great words I could use, but defender of true California against Gavin Newsom. He has had no problem standing up to the governor on gas taxes, has been fighting the governor to reform and restore California to what it was. And he's younger, he's diverse. He is going to be a royal thorn in the governor's rear end. And he is coming up into this. So I think we're also going to see a different flavor of what's inside the assembly and in the Senate. We have some people that Rosalie Achaubo, and fantastic state senator. They did everything to redistrict her out of existence, and she is winning. So I see a lot of positivity and with a Congress controlled by the Republicans and with great people like Vince Fong and Kevin Kiley, who both served in our state legislature, still have a lot of friends in the state legislature. There's those ties to try to force things from a federal level back down to the state level. So we have 2 years of this beachhead to expand it. And so my final thoughts would be, take that positive energy and really look at yourself and say, can I give 2 years of my life, 2 years, to becoming the next dog catcher, the next fire district, the next city council, school board, and take this state back. Do not let them have the ground. I watched a lot of liberal leftist Democrats try to flee to school boards and other places to be in a place of protection. And now we need to be hyper-focused on them. I'm meeting with a bunch of people today about how to get those people out of office and replaced with the right people.
Well, certainly a lot to look forward to there. I'm sure we will have plenty to discuss once January comes and all the new legislation comes out. Looking forward to doing that with you. But we might even have to do a follow-up to this as the vote counts come to completion here. But Rick, I know you're a busy guy. I do want to thank you for the time and walking us through this today.
Oh, thank you. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like videos like this and you want to help spread the word, please, once again, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It really helps with the algorithms to get this message out there. And like Rick said, there's still a lot of work to be done. We're certainly going to be pushing through and doing it here at CRPA. So please, if you want to be a part of that change, which it looks like it's possible going into the future, please reach out, get in contact with us. There's always something to do. Otherwise, thanks again, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.